Hello, Trina.
Hello. Yay, was able to get on.
One updated link to the meeting to Pete Adams so that he can join. His wasn't working, so I think we'll be starting shortly. But can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Looks good. All right. Thank you.
Are you all able to hear me all right? Okay, good.
Yeah. A little soft, but okay. I'll concur.
Well, I think if you move it closer to me, then, yeah, there you go. Then you're going to be quieter. And then if Pat's calling a roll call, she's going to be over there. So if we can try to use these, that will help probably broadcast into that a little better too. Does it sound a little bit better right now? Kyle adjusted the microphone a bit.
You sound fine. Oh, thank you.
Okay. We're going to be just a minute yet, Lisa, until we get Pete logged in. Pat is sending an email off to make sure we can get him logged in. Thank you, Pat.
iPhone joining. Not sure if that's. Not yet. I believe that is yes.
We do have a quorum, correct? Okay. All right, I just sent Peter a text and said that we're going to get started since we have a quorum, and whenever he's able to join us, we'll keep an eye open for him in the waiting room. Is that all right? All right, I've got 6:34. And Mayor Tome here to call to order the Columbus Common Council for a public hearing on the 2021 proposed budget. Today is Tuesday, November 24th. Again, we're utilizing Zoom video conference for this evening to try to keep everyone safe during COVID-19. I'm present this evening in the council chambers along with City Administrator Ellefson and Clerk Pat Gable, along with Lisa, to help us with the technical side of things. Whenever you're ready, could you please take a roll call for us, Pat?
Adams isn't on yet. Gray?
Present.
McCabe?
Here.
Piperone?
Here.
Reed?
Trina, you have to unmute.
Oh, I didn't hear anything.
Hey.
Here.
Ryan?
Here.
And Tome.
I'm here. Thank you. We do have an iPhone out there. Is that Alder Adams, perhaps?
It could be Keith Peterson.
Okay, Keith Peterson. All right. Okay, this meeting has been noticed in accordance with state statutes and local ordinances. Unless anyone on the council is opposed, I will open the public hearing at this time. I have 6:36, public hearing on the proposed 2021 budget for the city of Columbus. I'll turn it over to Administrator Ellefson, who has prepared a brief PowerPoint for us on the budget.
All right, thank you. I'm going to try to share my screen here so that you're able to see it on Zoom. All right, so a lot of you have seen this budget for a number of months already. We've been talking about it, so some of this will sound familiar to you, but I thought it's a good idea to just review it again and see if it prompts any questions, and just kind of go through some of the basic information. And if you have any questions, jump in, and I will try to get you the information you need. So what we're talking about tonight is obviously the 2021 budget. We'll be actually going through the adoption procedure later on in the next meeting, and we'll cover the specifics about what you're approving then. But I thought I would start with some of the information, some of the core statistics that we talk about. And we talk about these sort of every year as we go through the budgets. Population-wise, we're at 5,187 is the Department of Administration estimate right now. We'll have the census numbers hopefully coming out in the next year or so. That's up 14 people. Equalized value-wise, without the TIFs, our value increased about 22 million or 21.9 million. Unfortunately, in our TIFs, we did have an $11 million loss. But I think we've talked about that a couple of times, that there was an assessment error essentially at the Department of Revenue, and this is the year when that kind of hit to correct itself. So it was an $11 million correction of an error, not really a true loss in value, because that value shouldn't have been assessed there by Department of Revenue initially. And then in the past year, we had net new construction of over $7 million. General fund budget, I thought I would touch on that. That's the main budget that we operate many of our programs out of. Essentially, we have an overall budget decrease of more than $74,000 in the general fund budget. On the revenue side, just trying to make sure if anyone's in the waiting room, I let them in. On the revenue side, the property tax contribution that we allocated to the general fund actually is going up by $68,000. We'll talk about the levy later on. That's not the levy increase, that's just the amount of the property tax that is sent to this fund versus other funds. And the carryover funds, compared to the previous year, we reduced that by 40%. So we're trying to take the revenue from the current year and allocate it to the current year versus, relying more heavily on past revenues, except for when appropriate, like when projects span multiple years. Also, the transportation aids dropped this year by about $20,000, and the circuit court revenue also dropped by $22,000. And then we also incorporated several rental reductions to accommodate the COVID situation that we're in. We anticipate just less rentals of parks and facilities overall, and so we did reduce the amount of revenue we expected from that. On the expense side, we did maintain or increase a lot of the commitments that The council's already made to historic preservation, to road maintenance, stormwater repair and maintenance, the pavilion maintenance, fire equipment maintenance. That seems to be a theme this year was fire equipment having expensive repairs, so we've tried to up the commitment to that. And then also the city website would be updated with the budget that we've presented. There's also a $25,000 increase in the expenses, but it's really offset by the potential match from an urban forestry grant. And if we're able to receive that grant of $25,000, that would help take most of the standing ash tree population that we have left over and take that down at a more rapid pace, and also implement some replantings to replenish that. So I think that if we get that grant, that will be a good way to tackle that problem.
Flip to the next page. There's 3 people waiting in the waiting room.
All right. All right, getting back to the budget presentation, moving to the wastewater fund and out of the general fund. The revenues and expenditures both reduced in the.
Sorry, Kyle, we're getting a lot of feedback. If everybody in Zoom could actually mute themselves so that we can have them hear.
Thank you. I might just go in and check and see if it looks like everyone is muted. All right, I'm not
There's a
hearing.
caller who's not.
Let's see. All right, we'll mute there.
Much better.
All right, and we don't have anyone signed up for public comment this evening, right, Pat? Okay. All right. Let's see how that goes. So the wastewater fund, we basically reduced the revenues and expenditures for the wastewater fund. We didn't have any major projects to put into the operating budget, obviously, but there's also some short-term changes to the use patterns that I think have reduced the revenues. Businesses are not operating like they normally do, and even some of the institutions like schools, they're operating at reduced capacity, and a certain amount of their population lives outside the city. So if they're not at school showering and using water, they're potentially not using any city water. And so short term, I think there'll be a small reduction in the revenue. I don't think it's significant, and it will correct itself as the situation does. We also have the rate study that's underway. I anticipate they're going to recommend a rate increase, but that is not included in this budget at all right now. We're still running a surplus. It's a small surplus, and the gap is narrowed. But at this point, looks like there's Pete. At this point, we're just running on the current status and the current rates. We've talked about the capital plan a little bit. We've not really completed a comprehensive plan yet. I know that there was some previous documents out there, but we wanted to take a fresh look at it with engineering, administration, and staff, and that's not complete at this point, so that would be something that would be coming up later in the year when we get a more solid indication of what work actually needs to be completed and in what time frame. There is a boiler and clarifier repair that is potentially being considered during 2021. And I think if those become apparent that that's the right time to do them, I think we'll have that conversation about whether we borrow for those and finance them, or if there's replacement funds or cash on hand. It may be more beneficial to finance them, but that's something we'll talk about, I think, when that time comes. Compensation and benefits, across the board, we had a general wage increase of 1.5% that was built into the budget. That's relatively in line with other area communities. There are some that were higher than the 1.5, and there's others that have different compensation schemes and mechanisms where they have, some compensation that's a general wage increase plus a step increase plus an inflation increase, cost of living. Ours is much more flat. It's just a general wage increase, and it was 1.5%, which we felt was a good balance between rewarding and keeping the employees, but also trying to limit the impact on the budget in the near term. Unusually, health insurance did not increase at all. There was, a few cents up or down here or there, but essentially a 0% increase, which I don't anticipate we'll have again next year. But it's a nice luxury to have this year. And then also the retirement system was a flat contribution rate for the general employees, so that didn't increase at all. Just touching on some of the different budget lines from 2020, the different budget for the different departments. Library, again, only looking at the city contribution because the library budget is set by the library board. But the part we control is the amount that the city contributes of property tax to the library. Less than 0.5% increase, about $1,093. The Aquatic Center, they had some significant repairs this year, and I think that the hope is that we've gotten a lot of those big maintenance items behind us. Hopefully, the leaks have all been detected, so we're going to be using less chemicals, less water, and there should be less major repairs out there. So their reduction in the property tax contribution was about $18,000, which was significant. And then room tax, again, with the COVID situation, we anticipated reduced revenue as less people travel and less people stay in our room tax generating facility. Garbage and recycling, we talked about that at the previous meeting. The fee structure from the current year that we're in didn't cover the contract and recycling center expenses that we had projected for next year. We did adopt the updated fees for 2021, and so that should give us a surplus of about 2.4% in the next year. But again, 2021 is the final year of the contract for the garbage and recycling collection. And so we'll be going through that process during this year, and maybe we'll see some cost savings, but there could also be a large contract increase if that's the competitive field that we find ourselves in. So that's really unknown on how long that rate will last. Columbus area EMS, I think we've talked about adding the 2 additional municipalities. They had them on a temporary basis as kind of a side agreement in 2020. In 2021, they're joining the Columbus area EMS group. And what that does is it reduces the cost to all the municipalities by adding basically more population to the coverage formula. And there was some contract fees that increased. The contract cost had been flat for a number of years. So the actual contract went up by more than 4%. Again, our share was down by $5,000 though. So that's positive as long as the coverage and the quality maintain, our expectations. Tourism is much like the room tax in that we anticipate a reduction in the revenues. Similarly, we're not anticipating ramping up the expenditures at this time because it's a little premature to focus on tourism and trying to get people to come to the community when we really don't have a lot of amenities open for them right now, and there's a lot of agencies telling people not to travel. So I think in the future we could see that ramp up where using fund balance potentially they could implement some programs that might even in the short term outstrip the revenues as long as they're using fund balance in kind of a dedicated and coordinated way. Debt service, that received additional property tax contributions of more than $6,000 than the 2020. It was actually projected to go down based on some previous plans, but adding that and maintaining that level of property tax contribution, that has let us keep our reduce our ability or our need to use the drawdown funds from the Gateway project. So what that'll mean is in the next couple of years, we'll have more flexibility to use those funds if we need to, and ultimately be in a better position overall and not having big spikes where we have years of debt service that increase more than we maybe take in new revenue. Capital projects also this year was relatively light. It's about half of last year or half of 2020, and it's about $21,000 less from the property tax that will be funding this. The items we're going to be working with in the capital project or capital equipment budget would be the landscape trailer for DPW. Again, gaining some efficiency with staff and equipment so that we can reduce overall cost and wear and tear on machines. Purchasing the used bucket truck from Water and Light. That's a $45,000 piece of equipment, and we'll be buying that on a 3-year installment, essentially at $15,000 a year. And so 2021 we'll take ownership of it and be making our first payment of $15,000, and then also continuing to fund the preliminary work on Highway 89 as we get closer and closer to that project ramping up. The tax increment districts, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on these. Essentially, District 3 continues to perform. It's producing a surplus, had a very small reduction in value. Tax increment District 4, that's the one that had a huge, more than $10 or $11 million reduction in its value due to that assessment error. And so that was more than a third of all the value in that, all the increment in that district. I think long term, we're still on track. It's still a positive tax increment district, but it's just going to take a little bit of time for some of the incentives to kind of run their course. And that was a large shock over 1 year, but I think it'll be recovered over time. And then tax increment District 5, the project that we had hoped for didn't really happen as planned, but it is also already producing increment. And so as we move forward with District 5, I think we'll have some more flexibility on what to do since it's already net positive cash flow and generating increment. And then finally, the one thing that everyone usually wants to know is the tax rate. We don't have all of the districts or underlying and overlying tax districts. So I can't tell you that what your tax bill exactly is going to be. I can estimate what our mill rate will be if the budget as presented is adopted. And so essentially the mill rate is shown here. Last year's mill rate was 8.7987, and we have a reduction down to just below 8 to 7.941. That's about a 9.75% decrease in the mill rate, which is really good. But I think when you look at year over year, what you have to understand is that you can't compare one property value from 2020 to one property value for 2021 because there's two different values that you're going to be talking about because there was a citywide revaluation. And so your individual property is going to have a different experience based on if you were higher than the average assessment, lower than the average assessment, and then also depending on how other classes of property performed. Say, for example, all the commercial properties went up by 5%, but all of the residential properties went up by 20%. That's a big shift in the allocation of the tax dollars. So it's not really useful, I think, to compare a flat house value from year over year because it's going to be too individualized with the full revaluation. So one thing that we looked at was the state of Wisconsin gives us our expenditure restraint calculation, which is intended to keep our budgets limited and keep our spending in check. And it's a combination of your growth and then inflation. Basically, they take your growth, take 60% of your growth and add inflation in. And to qualify for that, we could have increased our budget by about 2.3%. And the tax levy that we've shown is actually up by 1.8% from actual dollars to dollars. The general fund budget decreased actually by 1.7% because there was some one-time funding from last year, I think from TIF 3 potentially repaying the general fund that increased the budget last year. So we're actually general fund wise having a budget decrease year over year, but we're well under that 2.3%. So we're not trying to max it out or anything like that. There, with the revaluation, I think that's going to skew some numbers, and I think also with some of the referendum coming down the line that was approved by voters, that's going to have an impact on the tax bills. So I think throughout this process, we were trying to be mindful of keeping ourselves sort of in a modest position and not maxing out just to max that number out. So that's kind of the budget in a nutshell. And like I said, I know we've seen this for a couple of months now, but does anyone have any questions about that?
I feel pretty straightforward, and I appreciate the effort and the information you presented.
Thank you.
There we go. All right, we will obviously be having a regular meeting to take potential action and discuss the budget further among the council, but we do have the public hearing open at this time. I don't believe there's anyone here in person that wished to make a comment. I don't know if there's anyone that's been logged in via Zoom that cared to make a comment under the public hearing for the 2021 proposed budget. If so, you can unmute yourself and identify yourself, your name and address if you wished to speak at the public hearing. Is there anyone present that wishes to do so? I see no one. Again, I'm obligated by law to ask for a second time if there's anyone present this evening, either in person or on Zoom video conference, that wish to comment at this public hearing on the proposed 2021 budget for the city of Columbus. Again, I see no one present. And for the third and final time, I'll ask if there's anyone that wish to make a comment at the public hearing on the proposed 2021 budget for the city of Columbus. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Do we need a motion to adjourn to the next meeting then, formally? Looking at Paul Johnson. Okay. All right. If someone would care to make a motion to adjourn, then we'll reconvene to a regular meeting.
Alder Piper will make a motion to adjourn.
Alder Ryan, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn this public hearing. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we stand adjourned. Now it is 6:58. I will call to order this meeting of the Columbus Common Council, regular meeting for Tuesday, November 24th, 2020. Pat, when you're ready, could you please take a roll call for us?
Adams,
Hey, I'm here.
Gray,
Present.
McCabe,
Here.
Piperone,
Here.
Reed,
Here.
Ryan,
Here.
Tome.
I'm here. Thank you, Pat. All right, if you are able, let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Again, this meeting has been noticed in accordance with state statutes and local ordinances. The next item is to approve the agenda. We have a very brief but important agenda this evening. Unless there's any alterations or deletions, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Alder Piper will make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Alder Reed seconds.
Motion from Piperone, second by Reed, to approve the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, the agenda is approved. We'll move on to correspondence and communications. Again, there is no one signed up present in person this evening, and I don't believe anyone signed up via Zoom. So we have no correspondence or communications this evening. We'll move on to new business item number 1, which is consider and take action on Resolution 27-20, a resolution for budget adoption and approval of a tax levy for the City of Columbus and the tax incremental districts. Again, we just did receive the PowerPoint presentation from our city administrator to kind of outline this year's budget. There was a memo in our packet, and I'll turn it over to Kyle to kind of go through that brief memo.
All right, thank you. So I just wanted to touch base and make sure that everyone is kind of clear on what we'll be going through or what we'll be approving. When we talk about approving the budget, you've seen the 35-page budget several times now, which is actually all of the departments, all of the expense lines from salary to utilities to a whole variety of things. That's essentially a workbook that helps us get to the budget numbers. When it comes to approving the budget, that's the one page that you have. It's got a bunch of small numbers on it. It's got a bunch of categories that are actually required by statute, where it talks about different general fund revenues and expenditure categories like general government, public safety, public works. That's actually the budget we'll be approving tonight, and it's at a very broad level. And so when you approve the budget, you're approving the spending in these categories. You're not necessarily approving down to the line of utilities or something like that, although the workbook supports kind of how we arrived at these numbers. And then outside of the budget, we also have a budget expense line policy that we'll be talking about probably at the next meeting, that helps exert some control over the process. But essentially what you're approving will be this one page that says 2021 proposed budget amended. And the next thing that I wanted to cover was what was amended from what was published in the paper. The tax levy does not change from what was published in the paper. There's essentially a change of $4,630, and that's being moved to general government would be increasing by $4,630, and the transfers to other funds is being reduced by $4,630. And that's reflected in the proposed budget amended that you have in front of you. And just to explain what that change was, as we went through some of the budgets, there was the municipal court budget was initially presented from the court with a salary increase for the elected judge, and the city's policy is during an elected term, your salary essentially stays fixed at what it was. So those funds were removed, and then additionally we reduced the levy contribution or the transfer from the general fund to the municipal court fund for special circumstances. It was a $500 budget last year. It was increased to $5,000 for next year. We haven't spent any money out of it yet, but there was a thought that it's good to be prepared, and if we need to institute guardianship for people, or we need to get a lot of translators involved in the municipal court, that we would have the funds to do it if we needed to. We haven't spent money out of it yet, so based on kind of how the budget worked out and some of the conversations we've had, that change was made. And so the budget as amended would include that change.
Thank you, Kyle. I guess if the council had any questions at this time, now would be the time to ask them. I guess I'll just start off by, thanking the administrator for putting all this work into a budget that I think is, pretty impressive for an administrator for the first year who's also a city treasurer. We've gone through a transition this year with the new finance director, but this has gone relatively smoothly given the environment that we're operating in this year. So I just want to thank Kyle for all the work that you put into this. It's been relatively painless compared to the last 7 years that we've gone through this. So thanks for your hard work. If there's any questions from the council at this time. I don't see any questions. If there are no questions, I guess the next step then would be to make a motion to approve resolutions 27-20.
Alder Reagan will make a motion to approve resolution 27-20. A resolution for the budget adoption and approval of the tax levy of the city of Columbus and tax and incremental districts. Adams, second.
Have a motion from Gray and a second from Adams to approve resolution or adopt resolution 27-20, a resolution for budget adoption and approval of a tax levy for the city of Columbus and tax incremental districts. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, let's please take a roll call on that, Pat.
Gray,
Aye.
McCabe,
Aye.
Pifferone,
Aye.
Reed,
Actually, Reed voted for McCabe accidentally.
oh,
Sounded like Reed. All right.
Better back up and,
okay, let's do this again.
sorry.
That's okay. Gray,
Aye.
McCabe,
Aye.
Pifferone,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Adams.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to new business number 2 then, which is consider and take action on resolution 28-20, a resolution for City of Columbus Public Sewer Utility budget adoption. Again, every year annually, we have to adopt the general fund budget and the wastewater utility budget separately. There is a small memo in the packet kind of outlining that. Are there any questions on this one? Kyle, did you have anything you wanted to say on that?
No, this one has been pretty steady for the whole time, and there's been no amendments.
Okay. Any questions from the council? All right, there are no questions on the sewer utility budget. I'll take a motion then to approve resolution or adopt resolution 28-20.
Alder Ryan, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution 28-20 and resolution for the city of Columbus public sewer utility budget adoption.
Reed seconds.
We have a motion from Ryan and a second by Reed to adopt resolution 28-20, a resolution for the city of Columbus of public sewer utility budget adoption. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there is no discussion, please take a roll call.
McCabe,
Aye.
Pifferone,
Aye.
Reed, Reed,
Reed?
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Adams,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. Thank you. I guess I'm used to going to the city claims, but we just approved them last week, so. All right, we'll move on to the report of city officers. I'll turn it over to Administrator Ellison first.
All right, just a few things since we did meet last week and covered many of the things. City Hall remains closed to the walk-in customers. If there's anything that you can't do by phone or email or electronically, I would just ask that they call City Hall and try to figure out an alternate way, which might include scheduling an appointment. The senior center, starting yesterday, is also closed to just walk-in customers and seniors. There are appointments available for certain activities that they're continuing. And again, if anyone has any questions about if they need something or if they can still do something, get access to some of the resources, reaching out to the senior center by telephone is a great way to find out what you can and can't accomplish right now. And also in-person rec programming that's really been limited or canceled for the most part, just with the way that the virus is kind of moving at a rapid pace and evolving quickly. It's just more and more things are being ratcheted down and trying to keep everyone as safe as we can and limit the unnecessary interactions. With COVID, I know I talked last time about staffing. Staffing has improved since last week. We hope that continues, but we're still encouraging everyone, staff and the public, to take all the precautions that they can. And, I think based on what we've been seeing in the last couple weeks, now is the time to kind of double down the efforts, hopefully, and get through these next few months. And hopefully there's better things on the other side of this. And on a hopeful note, we have had that DPW position, Director of Public Works position, that's been kind of hanging out there for a while since Zach left for Waukesha County. Our first recruitment really didn't give us the level, number of applicants that we were looking for a solid recruitment, and we talked a few meetings ago about bringing in some interim assistants while we reevaluated where or how we could recruit more effectively. In the meantime, the person that had seemed like the candidate for interim that we would have preferred and had the right experience became unavailable due to a family medical situation. So that kind of fell off the table. At the same time, we got a couple more applications of people that were interested in the full-time Director of Public Works position. And so now with the additional interest, it actually seems like we have kind of that solid number of people we need to move forward with recruitment and feel like we have a good enough class of people as far as numbers and experience to feel good about going forward. So that's kind of the plan we have right now, is that we're going to try to see this through and go through the interview process, and hopefully one of the candidates really shines during that process and they stand out. We'll obviously let you know kind of the outcome of that effort, but I'm really hopeful that it pans out and we can get to full staffed at the Department of Public Works and kind of get that ball rolling again, because that's a critical position. So we want to make sure we get it right, but I'm hopeful that with the renewed interest that will come out with a successful candidate. That's all I have.
Thank you, Kyle. Some of you may have seen some pictures out on the Facebook pages, etc. We had a special helper helping the Columbus Water and Light and Columbus DPW crews decorating the holiday tree and the utility poles downtown last week. Everyone's invited to drive by and enjoy the holiday lights and the holiday tree downtown Columbus beginning this Friday at dusk. There will be no holiday parade or gathering for the annual tree lighting this year due to COVID-19 related concerns. Keep an eye on the city's social media channels and website for a special message from Santa's elves this week. Also, Columbus Recreation Department is collecting letters to Santa as they do annually and delivering them to the North Pole for the children in our community. Deliver letters with a self-addressed stamped envelope to the Santa mailbox in front of the DPW building at 229 East School Street. Please make sure you deliver your letter to Santa before December 14th so he has time to reply. Just also want to wish everybody a very safe and happy Thanksgiving, and enjoy a few days at home with your family if you can. That's all I had. Unless there's anything else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Alder Piper will make a motion to adjourn.
Gray will second.
Motion from Pfeiffer and second from Gray to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? Okay, we'll stand adjourned for just a few minutes. Council President Ryan is going to try to run the committee of the whole remotely, so I'm going to take just a quick break and use the restroom, and you can stay on this Zoom meeting. You don't need to log back in, from my understanding, to another one. So whenever Katie's ready, you can just let me know.
Good luck, Katie.
All right, thank you. Just a few minutes. Okay, so welcome to the Columbus Common Council Committee of the Whole meeting. This meeting has been rescheduled from the original date of 11/17/2020 to now Tuesday, November 24th, 2020. The time is now 7:20 p.m. Pat, could you please take the roll?
Adams.
Present.
Gray.
Present.
McCabe. Mike.
Did you say McCabe?
Yep.
Yes.
Piperone.
Present.
Reed.
Here.
Ryan.
Here.
And Tome.
Here.
We have a quorum. Number two is this meeting has been noticed with local state statutes or with state statutes and local ordinances. Number three, if there are no changes that are needed to be made to the agenda, I'll take a motion to approve.
Alder Piper will make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Gray seconds.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, agenda is approved. Number four is citizen comments. Pat, I don't believe you mentioned any citizens were signed up for comment present at City Hall this evening.
That's correct.
Were there any citizens present via Zoom conference that wish to speak during the citizen comment portion of the meeting?
I don't have anyone signed up.
Seeing none. All right, thank you. We'll move on then to number five, which is the department reports. Within our packets tonight, we have several department reports. One September 2020 report of the treasurer, and the October 2020 reports of the police, the DPW, the fire, the media coordinator, and the library. Any elders have any questions or comments about the department reports included in the packet this evening?
I don't have a question regarding the report, and I apologize for going backwards here. The paragraph number 4, I just noticed it now. It's not a huge deal, I guess, but in citizen comments, it's due to COVID-19 health crisis, blah, blah, blah. By noon, November 17th. This was updated to November 24th. So perhaps it should reflect 24th instead of November 17th. I apologize for going backwards.
Good catch. So no comments about any of the department reports. Okay. All right, then we'll move on to number 6.
We had a quick comment. I was tickled to see from the police department that looks like a chip ID scanner for pets is going to be donated. I was just really pleasantly surprised and glad Gray had brought up the idea.
I concur. Yeah, that was pleasant to read about. And thanks, Alder Gray, for mentioning that to the police department, and it worked out well. Okay, I guess no further comments. We'll move on to number 6, which is review and discuss the CHLPC Pavilion Window Restoration Project, Phase 3. There's information included in our packets this evening, quite a lengthy memo. Kyle, I'm not sure if you wanted to head this off or if it was you wanted to kind of.
Sure, I can start it, Katie, if you'd like.
Okay.
So this, I think, is in some form or fashion been in front of the council before. As far as being, related to the pavilion and windows, this specific project, I'm not clear if this has actually specifically been approved, but I know there was an approval in December of a specific dollar amount, but I believe that window project was done in the past year. There's a couple items in here as we talk about, needing signatures, whether it's on a contract or for building permits, etc. The one thing that I want to make sure that we do on this project and all projects is that we're following the right bidding procedures and things like that to make sure that we're doing it legally. And so that's one area that I'm not exactly clear if we've gone through the bidding process, because it's a public building, so that makes it likely a public construction project as it relates to remodeling or renovating a public building. Additionally, the donated funds are being directed to the HLPC, I think, to accomplish this, but HLPC is a creation of the city, and essentially, because HLPC is a creation of the city, they're operating as an agent or an arm of the government. And so on multiple levels, I think this is a project that needs public bidding under the statutes. And so I think we want to accomplish a couple things. I guess one is to make sure the council hears about the project and is comfortable with the project moving forward. And then I guess to set the expectation on, if we're going to require public bidding and, the publishing and things like that, moving forward if the statutes require it. I know Amy Jo has done some work with HLPC, kind of replacing Zach, coming in a little bit later, trying to catch up to where we are. So she might be able to speak a little bit more about the scope of the project from the public works perspective. But I'm mostly interested in the kind of the administration, the budgeting, and the bidding aspects of it.
Thank you, Kyle. Yeah, it did state in here that there was a very short list of qualified, I guess, contractors that were able to do the work. I guess that's important that I wanted to bring up to council, I guess, but we were just not provided with that short list, and there weren't 3 bids submitted as there would be normally with any other public building maintenance. Go ahead. Alder Gray,
Okay.
go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't hear the first part. So this is more of a continuation of the projects that they've been doing. So I don't know that they realized if they needed to rebid, have it completely rebid. It's the same contractor that's been doing all the other windows, and this is just finalizing and finishing the project. It's just the 3rd phase of the same project, not really a new project so much.
Katie,
There's somebody who wanted to speak prior to Ian.
we have John Salzwader from HLPC present in the chambers who wish to speak.
Good evening, everyone. I'm John Salzwedel. I'm the CHLPC Vice Chair. I'm kind of the point person on this window restoration project. As was alluded to by Katie, she's correct that there was a very short list that was provided to HLPC from the State Historical Society. I contacted everybody on this list well over a year and a half ago when we were first seeking out a qualified entity to do this work, which was approved in December 2019 by the council. I didn't get email responses back from everybody. I got some phone calls back. The group that we ended up going with was Community Building and Restoration, and they were really the only ones who were able to give us a bid that they'd be able to come out and do the work on the site to take the windows out and take them to their shop and then put them back at the site. It was a large scope project. everybody else that I spoke to from that short list that I talked about said it was too big of a project for them. So HLPC talked about it. We had Eric Lindberg from Community Building and Restoration out. He's co-owner and one of the craftsmen there. And after that meeting, we decided to go ahead with them for the window restoration project. Now for this phase 3, which was in the original contract, there was some investigative work that was going to be done, and basically see what kind of shape the openings were in, and if they'd be able to work with the windows that were once boarded up, as you can also see in the paperwork that was provided in your packet. Let's see. I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought here. Yeah, but they gave us a bid for this phase 3, and we actually went back and forth with them a couple times. It wasn't as though they had a carte blanche on whatever they wanted to name for a price. We actually at one point said if you can't do it for a reasonable amount, we'd rather not do it at all. And I think the initial bid that we got from them was $90,000, and after some, I think I'd call it shrewd negotiating, we were able to get them down by like about $30,000 to a $61,350 to do the Park Avenue side of the windows at the pavilion. So that comes out to a little bit over $5,000 a window to restore that aesthetic, and that's including interior, exterior paint, and trim work.
Thank you. I think I don't have any objections to the project ongoing. I think what I'm concerned about and what Kyle brought up is just making sure we're maintaining legality when it comes to public buildings and our own rules. So I think what was approved back in December of 2019 was for $49,750 to paint the exterior of the pavilion, and the window restoration project, and I don't think it gave a dollar amount on that. Paperwork that's provided, but I don't have any objections personally to the continuation of or phase 3 of the window restoration. I think there's just concern from city staff that we may need to amend the way that we look at the pavilion as a public building, and how we require all other city buildings and properties to receive 3 bids rather, and present them to council. And I understand that this was a specific project that required somebody with historical knowledge, and that those contractors aren't always available or provide bids in the same fashion. So I think it's just something to think about. Kyle?
Thank you. I just wanted to touch base on that again. So if it qualifies as over $25,000 and public construction, there's publications that have to be made. So contacting people directly wouldn't satisfy that requirement. It has to be publicly noticed, and there's specifically, I think, a Class 2 notice under a certain, I think, Chapter 985 of the statutes. Additionally, project specs should be presented so that people understand what the project is. And being historically significant or specialized doesn't get around, that's not one of the exemptions to the public bidding and public construction contract requirements from the state. And actually the league's kind of given the opinion that if you get 0 bidders on a project, your next course of action is to re-advertise. And with negotiations, they also kind of caution against that, because if you're going to the lowest competitive bidder or the only competitive bidder, but then you're altering the price through different plans or specifications or considerations, those could have triggered another competitive bid if they had been spelled out in the initial contract. So, the league is, kind of set on, if you're going to do it a certain way according to statute, you should do it, and then you stick to it through the whole process, and everyone knows all the rules and all the, how the game is going to be played from start to finish, so that there's, nothing improper done later on. And this may be a continuation of a project that might not have been done in the correct way, but I think now's the time that we can correct that. And even if it was like a change order from an approved project that was done properly, even that's limited by the state to say if it's outside of 15% more than what the contract was for, you have to go back to bidding, so that you don't bid one thing and then multiply it by multiple times, and give an unfair advantage to some contractors over the others. So I just want to make sure we're doing it right, because the downside, if we don't do it right, is that if we don't follow the process, we could be held basically for lost profits from anyone who says that they would have bid on the project, and we wouldn't have a lot of defense if we didn't follow the legally required process.
Just to follow up on that, there was a scope of work provided to the community building and restoration, which is endorsed by the State Historical Society, of requirements that historical buildings need to meet.
Did you want to speak?
Oh, yeah, I did. So I'm still comfortable with the proposal given, but would we be safest putting out an open bid just to go through the process, knowing full well that that our current proposal is probably going to be it?
Is that a question for Kyle?
It was. Thanks.
I mean, my opinion is, as soon as we can get within the regulations, the better. But I saw Paul Johnson, who's, actually probably the best one to speak to it.
I definitely think that, based on what John Salzwedel was just saying, I don't think the process that's been followed for this particular project is going to meet what's necessary for competitive bidding. It would be a good idea to back up a little bit, go through the bid process properly. It's very likely that the company that you have and are working with right now is going to be the successful bidder, but that's not a guaranteed conclusion, and that's what we're trying to prevent here. I mean, if there's only one or two people that are able to do this work, the bid process ferrets that out by itself, because the bid process, when the project is described, will require the specialized experience and knowledge to do the work. So basically, your regular window installers are not going to be qualified to do this work, and so we're probably going to end up in the same place, but going through and dotting the I's and crossing the T's would be a really good idea now.
Ian Gray?
So, just a question, how long will this process take for us to publicly announce this to get the bids? And when we don't get 3 bidders back, do we have to re-announce and wait again? Or can we just move forward when we don't get any additional bidders?
Right. There isn't a requirement for 3 bidders. It's when you're doing this, when you're putting a project out for bids like this, you are identifying what the project is, that you're identifying the scope. And if you only get one company that meets it, okay, then that's the bid. And then you look at the price, and if the price is not what you can afford to pay or want to pay, then you just reject all the bids and start over again. On the other hand, if that one company bids and you're comfortable with the price, you accept the bid and you're done. That's
Paul,
kind of the whole process, is to see who's out there instead of contacting them and contacting a certain few people. You're opening it up to everybody, and if you only get one, you did your job.
okay, Paul, if I could just add to that, that's basically what we did. I had a short list of, I'm guessing, maybe 9 or 10, and I sent out the scope of work proposal to many people. I got a phone call. I was looking through emails trying to jog my memory. This was a year and a half ago that we did this. I know one of the other outfits that I contacted was Acker Millwork, and I got a phone call back from that lady saying this is too big of a scope of project for them. So as a commission, appointed commissioners by the city, HLPC looked at the bids that we did get back and the people that could produce with their expertise satisfactory job, and that's where we voted on entertaining and awarding that project to community building and restoration out of Shorewood.
Right, but there's a specific process that needs to be followed for public construction bidding, and it's what Kyle alluded to a few minutes ago, is, and it answers Ian's question a little bit too, is that the project gets written up. Somebody has to figure out what the scope of the project is. Then it gets published, and it's a class two notice. It's in a local newspaper so that the entire world can see it if they want to. And I think if I remember correctly, when Jason Letha does bidding, they have a couple websites that they use that even cast a broader net. But the idea is to put it out there to anybody that might be interested. And like I said, you might end up in exactly the same place here, but there is a process that you have to be able to show that you have followed in order to protect yourself and make sure that you've done the bid process correctly.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. Out of full transparency, I'll say and share with you all that we've already voted on phase 3 and actually put down a down payment with community building and restoration for this third phase. Under our, and if I'm wrong, assuming I am now, that may have been premature, but based on the information that we were given, this was just a continuation of the project which was approved. So I'm not really sure, Mr. Johnson, for some advice. You can't really unring that bell.
Well, and that will be a decision for the council to make either in a few minutes or in a few days or a few weeks or whatever that case might be. I understand the situation that we all find ourselves in, but I that's a little bit different question. But it also raises another question as to exactly who has the authority to do what when it comes to the pavilion, well, the pavilion especially. Um, I went back and when this issue came up, I went back and looked at how this was handled in 2015, and I think that was the elevator project at the time, if I remember right. And if it wasn't, it's still, we had a very large conversation about who makes what decisions when it comes to doing pavilion work, because it is a city-owned building. However, the HLPC was responsible for raising a lot of the money, if not all of it, for that project. And at the end of when the project got started, the council at that time decided that they were going to approve the project. They were going to delegate the authority to the details of the project to HLPC. HLPC was then responsible for putting everything out for bid, which it did. It put out for bid a design contractor, and it then the design contractor helped with the bidding of the work. And the city council basically gave HLPC authority to run the project from there as long as it came back and kept the city council abreast of what was going on, which it did. Carolyn was at many meetings with updates, and that actually worked fairly well, I think. And I don't know exactly how this project got set up, or if the council and the HLPC need to step back a little bit right now and maybe put a framework together as to how this is going to go forward. I know you're on phase 3, so obviously something has been happening already. But maybe there just needs to be clarification as to who's supposed to be doing what.
Alder Gray, I'm going to let you speak.
So I think the moral of what is going on is we're obviously up against a tight timeline because the project is already scheduled to move forward. So how quickly could we come into compliance, post a public bid? I mean, we all know full well it will most likely stay on the exact same path that it is now. But if we need to just do that for compliance, how quickly can we accomplish that so that we don't lose time on the current project?
My guess would be about a month. I think that from what John has been saying, it sounds like the project is written. I mean, that you know exactly what it is that you're doing. And again, in all honesty, the agreement that you have with the people that you've already chosen is probably the bid language that you would use. That's because that's what you need to have done. So you put that in proper bid form. You run a class 2 notice. You announce the date that you're going to open the bids. You open the bid. Lo and behold, there's one. You pick that company. You've now followed your process and you're done. And then you can move on. So I will agree that some of this is form over substance, but I think it's a rather important form.
How long does that bid need to stay active in the public before we can move forward?
I don't think there is a required time frame. I mean, usually it's a class 2 notice, and you usually, so normally what happens is you put the notice out there. There's a certain period of time where people can come in and pick up the plans or pick up the project or inquire, and then you give them a little bit of time to sharpen their pencil and make their bid. And then there's a date certain that they have to have their bid in, and then you open the bid and you pick. So that's pretty much up to who's ever going to be running this part of the project, be it HLPC or the city council. It's pretty much up to the people that are making that decision as to how long you're going to let this go.
Okay, so basically if we decide it's on the HLPC, they could put a public notice for a class 2 in the paper next week, and we could have it due by the end of said week, and then they could move forward.
Well, the class 2 notice would have to run, and maybe Pat can help. I don't know if there's a specific day, because the Beaver Dam paper is now daily, if I remember correctly. But it has to run for 2 weeks, and then I would probably suggest that you have at least a couple weeks after the last publication for everybody to get their bid back in, which is where I came up with a month. And then you pick a date that bids are going to be opened, and then if HLPC is going to award the bid, they have to do it at a meeting that's called, but they can call that meeting whenever they want. If the council is going to award the bid, then it's either at a regularly scheduled meeting of the council, or it's at a special meeting. I mean, that's the process.
Thank you, Attorney Johnson. Does anybody have any other alders or mayor? Do you have any questions or comments or concerns? Mayor Tom?
Yeah, I've been kind of waiting to make a comment here. I think Attorney Johnson hit the nail on the head as far as my understanding of the process. I think, this becomes even more complex besides the public noticing requirements. If it exceeds that threshold of $25,000, that you have to go through that process. The other part of the process as well is that essentially the money that the HLPC is raising is turned into a donation going into a public building. So that donation has to be dedicated or accepted by the city council. So I think there's kind of 2 or 3 different processes that kind of have to happen with all these projects. I mean, I know that we approved the window project last year, and I saw some windows being done, but I didn't know that it was going to be done in phases. So I guess my question would be is that if there was a check that was sent out for phase 3, there should have been another agreement or contract that's signed for phase 3, but who signed the contract? If there was no signature from, the city administrator or myself, that's what needs to happen to execute that contract, to turn that donation into an improvement into a public building. So I see the need to have someone for you guys to work with from the city side to make sure that we're kind of checking off all those boxes when we get, especially into a project that exceeds that $25,000 threshold. Because, there are ways of getting around the dollar amount, which would not be legal or something that anybody would advise you to do, is to break it into 10 projects at $2,500 a piece. Ultimately, the project is a whole. So there's just no way to get around it. And I guess the first advice I received is, well, why would you ever consider trying to get around it? Because you're just going to create, potential liability for the city. So I don't know exactly who that person is. I know right now Amy Jo is trying to help you since Zach is not here, but basically just having that checklist to make sure that you're going through all of them, so we don't run into the situation where we kind of have to backpedal a little bit, because I know that you don't want that either.
It seems like a lot of ceremonious chain wagging.
That's kind of what I have to do.
Yep.
I had to call 3 times for a public meeting and no one's in here. Every time I've done that, and I've done it many times, I have to do it.
And I know we've tried to get on this cow since I think August. We've been trying to set this up. So meanwhile, the time everything gets pushed back, and we're under time constraints too. We have an open window of time where they could get this work done. With the advantage of the COVID situation is that there's nothing happening at the pavilion right now, and if this is going to happen, which HLPC has voted on, the state has endorsed the project. They thought it was a great concept, great idea. I guess I'm just a little confused in the change of how things appear how they were and how they kind of work now. I think this was all under again, I use the word assumption that this was just a matter of formality.
Well, obviously, no one wants to throw a wrench into a successful project like this, but we have to follow the rules. And I think just we need to figure out exactly, we know what we need to do now to move forward, and to do that in a timely manner. Do you know how long this proposal is good for that you received from the contractor? I don't see any date on there.
There was no expiration date. The idea was to get it done this calendar year yet.
Sure. It's good that there's no expiration date,
Right.
though. That's one.
And I guess as far as posting a Class 2 notice, is this something that HLPC should be doing by ourselves then, or is this something that we should be referring to Amy Jo, who's kind of our stand-in for the facility maintenance manager?
Well, I think the HLPC has to have some responsibility because it's their project, but I think they need to work with the city of Columbus because it's a public building as well. So I think that, again, was where we have to have that contact, making sure we're following it. Attorney Johnson, did you want to say something there?
Well, no, I was going to say pretty much what you just said, Mayor, which is somewhere in this conversation, the city council and the HLPC need to decide or delegate who's going to be doing what. This is a city-owned building, and so the city is actually in charge of this process. As I mentioned with this 2015 project, that was it was a large project at the time. The city delegated these decisions to the HLPC and let them run with it. And it worked out great, but it still required the bid process to be followed, a regular check-in from HLPC to the council at basically one COW meeting per month. So it wasn't like, here's your blank check, go have a good time. That's not how that works. So somewhere in this conversation, the two bodies need to decide who's going to do what and how. And if you're looking for experience with putting the bid package out and together, and because he's not here, I'll throw Jason Letha up for grabs because he does this all the time, and he at least can point you in the right direction as to here's a good form to use or something like that. I know this isn't his type of project, but he knows how this works better than anybody else, I think, at the city.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say, and Paul has referred to this a few times about the elevator project, and I do think that maybe the difference between that project and the current projects we have right now is when you hired McKee and Associates, they did all that. They covered all those legal bases because they understood what the state statutes were, whatever they had to comply with. So it was kind of a done deal. But when you do the standalone projects like, painting or windows or whatever it is on any of the buildings, or if you don't have that design contractor or consultant to work with, they don't really have any responsibility. They're doing windows and they don't really care what the state statutes say. To them, they're just bidding out to, a big house. It's a resident, it's a person, but this is a different situation because it's a public building and we have to adhere to that threshold. So I think that's probably the difference between the 2015 and a project like this. So.
So basically, what it sounds like Attorney Johnson is saying is we need to delegate how this is going to move forward. And there's quite a time crunch that we need to figure this out quickly. I would say that the city should support creating the phase 2 bid process and getting it publicly noticed in whatever means in the paper necessary. And we should delegate that the HLPC is able to accept the bid without having to come back to council, because we all know it's going to be the same company and the same bid anyway. And that just makes it easier to move forward and will shorten the amount of time that this has to go back to the back burner. And I can also speak to the HLPC has been trying to get this on the COW agenda for quite some time, and other projects. I've tried to do it for them myself. So we really need to try and get this moving forward the most equitable way possible.
If
I'm in agreement. I think the city should be the one to figure out the paperwork for the noticing, and that the historical group should only have to fill it in. I don't think they should have to do any research.
And the mayor was signaling, did you?
Carolyn was saying something in the chambers, and I wanted her to, if she wanted you to hear it, to come up to the microphone.
Good evening, council.
The microphone's actually not on. There you go.
Good evening, council. I guess
Hold
going
on.
through this.
Can you hear Carolyn all right out there? Oh, okay, I just wanted to be sure. Sorry.
All right. Going through this process, and I agree, I think we should be working together, on doing the Class 2 notice. I personally just feel rather than just have us go forward, even if we can get on the regular council agenda and get a council approval, or, we're all familiar with where we're at on this in the 11th hour and all that kind of thing. I agree. I think we should do the Class 2, go through the proper steps. I honestly and personally would feel better if we can get, rather than have to go to the COW, then go to a regular meeting, if there's a chance that we could just put it on a regular agenda, when we get the bidding in, do the bid opening, and how does council feel about that? As opposed to just, letting us run with it, whatever we get in, and make that decision. I don't know
I would be okay with it going on a regular meeting. as
if,
opposed to
versus nothing at all. I think our group, on speaking on their behalf, I think we would feel better, getting the final approval and, the go-ahead from council, which, again, we're all familiar with where we are right now on this project and trying to move forward on it. But,
like I said, I would be fine with a regular council meeting. I do prefer it to come back to council one more time.
right,
I
that, yeah.
understand But thank you.
Yeah, if we don't have to hold, I guess, again, we've been trying to get all of us, get this on the committee the whole for a couple months now, so it's another reason kind of, whoops, here's where we are. If we don't have to go through that month process, and maybe, there was a suggestion of just letting us run with it, I think our group would feel better, at least getting on a regular meeting, letting the council know, okay, if that's the case, we did only get one bid, or we got two, and, that kind of thing. So, just again, common courtesy, city building, we're working on this project together to keep everybody in the loop.
Any other comments for Carolyn? Anybody else feel good about just having it come to a regular meeting?
That's good.
Ian?
Just a question, so we're having, once the bids come back, go to a regular meeting, we're not waiting for a regular meeting to have the class 2 go out to the public?
That's my understanding. I thought the mayor was signaling.
Yeah, I'm looking for some clarification to make sure that what we're doing is legally, is a legal option, because I know everybody wants to make this work, and I just heard what Attorney Johnson said, and I'm not trying to send anybody through a mousetrap they don't have to go through, but we have to get the legal notice out that has to
Correct.
run 2 weeks. And so then,
Yep.
how long, the HLPC is going to have to establish the date that you're gonna open those bids at, and the date that you can open those bids is the day that you can accept the bid that you think that you're probably going to take.
Correct, right. I guess to clarify, right, we're absolutely going through the process, and the time frame of that. I guess what I'm asking is, there was a comment made about just having us run with it. I guess what I'm asking is, rather than come back to a committee after that, come to a committee of the whole, and then have to go to a regular meeting for approval. I guess I'm just asking to, rather than come to, take that month's time, if we can knock off 2 weeks of that, or kind of plan when those bids are due, or when the bid opening date is, and plan that according to a regular council meeting, get on a regular council meeting versus a committee of the whole, and then have to wait 2 weeks and go to the regular meeting.
Paul's
Try
reading.
and go through the proper process, but if we can,
Paul Johnson had his hand up, so he may have a comment here.
Today's the 24th of November. If you were able to get your information put together and run as a class 2 notice on as an example, like the 3rd and the 10th of December, and then you pick a week or 2 weeks after that, depending on what you want to do, for people to put their bid in. I mean, you're looking at either having a special meeting the 29th, or making sure that you're ready to go for your first meeting in January to approve the bid at the council level, if the council's going to approve the bid, or even a little bit sooner if HLPC is going to approve the bid, because they can move faster than you guys can. So, I mean, that's part of who is going to be approving the bid, the council or the HLPC.
Yeah. And Attorney Johnson, aside from the bid opening process, and I don't think that the council needs to get involved in the bid opening process, but
Right.
it depends on the chain of events that happens in a project like this, because if you If you want to make things move quicker, you could come into the committee of the whole to say, here's the window project that we have. This is what we'd like to do. We have a donation to do so. We're going to put it through this process and put out, we need your blessing to put out the class 2 notice. I mean, there should be some communication there. You put out the class 2 notice, you get the bid, but ultimately, once you get the bid, the donation has to be accepted just because of the way the ordinance and the relationship works between HLPC and the city. It sounds way more confusing than it needs
Okay.
to be, in my opinion, but it's not just, you know, as much as we want to cram this through, we still have to do several things. We have to
Okay,
get the class 2
so, right,
notice
we
out.
need to back up on the, get the approval of the
Yeah,
donation.
I mean, regardless,
Mr.
I think we have a month right now, as Attorney Johnson said. We've got you know, your bid or preferred bid at this point. The only thing that would change is if you did get 3 bids and you got a more competitive bid, then you would have to basically come through with the committee of the whole to say, we got a better bid, this is who we want to go
Mm-hmm.
with, because ultimately you're asking someone from the city to sign the contract and execute it. That's why it has to go through.
Correct, yep,
Yeah,
yep, but, so we do need to back up though, and also on that, get approval from council for the donation of,
that's essentially what we would be doing even if we had this, but we can't preemptively accept the donation if you don't have the contract in your hand yet that's gone through the process. That's my concern
Okay.
right there. We're trying to really make a lot of different pieces move in one direction, so. I think we need to get that class 2 notice out as soon as possible.
I was gonna say, the first step we should work on getting that class 2 notice out, and then we can line up things from there in
And
that time frame.
You can
where
decide,
we're-
as Paul said, you know, if you have to legally put it out for 2 weeks, and you put it out for 2 weeks and 1 extra week to collect the bids, that's kind of up to you, as long as you're doing whatever the statutes require for the public bidding process.
Okay.
You know.
All right,
So,
well, then, okay,
but I don't know how much Jason Letha, you know, if Jason wants to get involved in something like this, but we're gonna have to have someone that's willing to work with you very quickly to get these things
look over the specifications and.
in motion and say, does this qualify for whatever the project is?
Okay.
Jason probably knows more about that, but I would leave it up to, you know, Kyle. He understands the law and what needs to be followed, so.
Yep.
Katie, I do have some things to add, but Paul's arm is gonna fall off. He's his hand up for a while.
I guess my question is, let's say we go through this bidding process and we get, let's say we get 3 bids or 2 bids, whatever, and one of them is less than the one that we have the agreement with building restorations right now. Is there any contractual, I mean, is there any way that we are in trouble now because we signed a contract with them, whether it's signed or not? I guess I'm clearing that, but it's maybe at this point a gentleman's handshake that they were going to be the next, you know, the continuation in the process of phase 3. If we get, let's say, building or building restoration XYZ company that undercuts them by, let's say, $5,000, now we have to go with them.
We don't have to, do we?
I mean, we already signed a proposal with building restoration company. Is there any trouble that we're going to get into on that end? You know, are we going to owe them money or this and that or whatnot?
Just to clarify, we're not required to take the lowest bidder. You know, so as far as Paul asking that question,
I think all we need, what we're looking at here, so everybody's satisfied is, yeah, if I may. Sorry, yeah, if I may, it sounds like really at the end of the day, we need to just satisfy the specifications and putting this out for a class 2 notice. And the foregone conclusion is we are going to go with who we've already chosen. Like you said, it's the formality of having all our legal T's crossed and I's dotted, correct?
Let's let Johnson clarify, please. Thank you.
To go back to the last, to Alder Piperone and what John just said, the requirement is that the bid be given to the lowest responsible bidder. Okay, and the word responsible is key. And what that means is that if I submit a bid to do the windows and I come in at $30,000 less than anybody else, I'm not going to get the bid because I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so that's where the word responsible comes in, and that's the likelihood that the company you've already chosen is going to be the winning bidder is probably pretty high. Can't say that 100% because you don't know who's out there, and that's part of the purpose of doing this in the first place. So I wouldn't go down the road about are we going to owe anybody money, because that's way down the road, and we'll worry about that issue later. And I also wouldn't go so far as to say that we're going to presuppose that the people that you've already got your handshake deal with are going to be the winners either. So let's just forget about that for a minute, and let's just go through the process. And the first step in the process is working out what the scope of the work is going to be. And I'm reading through the statute as I'm trying to talk here, which doesn't work very well. But you just have to put your scope of the work together. My guess is that's about 90% done already. You might need to tweak a few things based on what you are learning right here. And then you have to put a notice out that you are looking for this work, and people can come and pick up the plans at Amy Jo's office or Kyle's office or whoever office is going to have, the true plans. And then you give them a period of time to bring their proposal back. Those are the three big things that you have to be thinking about right now. And then we'll worry about the rest of it later on.
Just a question for clarification to Attorney Johnson. You said reasonable offer or reasonable bid.
Most responsible bidder.
Right, the most responsible. Who determines that? Is that HLPC then, or is that the council ultimately, or both?
That is a question for those two bodies to decide who's going to have the final say here. The city, it's a city building, it's the city's project, because it's the city building. If the council wants to be the one to approve the bid, okay. And if the council wants to delegate that responsibility to HLPC, I think that's okay as well. I mean, but that's just, somebody has to make that choice. Well, the council has to make that choice.
Ian.
So going back to kind of what I said before, what I would feel most comfortable with is the HLPC in cooperation with the city, whether it's Kyle or Jason Letha or whomever can assist them best in putting out the class 2 order into the papers for 2 weeks and giving it another week. I think the HLPC is more than capable of selecting the bidder. Then it can come back to the first regular meeting for us to approve the donation after they've already accepted the bidder. I think that's the easiest and most equitable way to treat this is we get that out in the papers right away, and then by our first meeting in January, we can accept the donation.
Are there any comments about Ian's suggestion? Go ahead, Mike McCabe.
Yeah, I guess I would agree with Ian on letting HLPC take the bull by the horns. I guess after we go through all the motions, let them decide. It's kind of their baby. They know much more about it than I do, anyways. That's just my opinion.
Same here. Is there anybody who, Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask John a question since he's still up, but the contractor proposal you have right here, these are the people that have worked on the windows for the first phases?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I
So
think
they understand, they know the intricacies of the project. They actually want to see the project finished with them doing it. That's, I think, why we were able to get such a drastic reduction in the bid. They want to use this for advertising, and they're a small upstart company, and this is just great advertising to be able to say, hey, that pavilion in Columbus, and everybody just marvels at it and say, we did that. So,
and it's very specialized work. I mean, when you look at
it really is. I'm not kidding. The small list that we got from the state who they recommended, I contacted all of those people, and again, just the large scope of work on this project, it's are more than most anybody is willing to take on. People are looking to come out and maybe do a repair on a cracked sash, or take care of some glass work or reglazing. But this is highly specialized. You're recreating and matching historic profiles.
I think that in your proposal here, I don't know if the language was drafted by you or the contractor or kind of bouncing things back and forth, but you've probably got a large or most of the language that you need that can be cleaned up to satisfy the project or scope of work for the notice in there. I don't have any problem with Ian's proposed timeline. I think that's about as quickly as we can get things done. I think the HLPC should be, looking at the bids because more about the specialized work that we're doing. That's why we have an HLPC. It's that board or committee's specialty, not the city council's. And then when the city council has the opportunity to accept the donation here, they can look at it and go, is this the most qualified bidder? Well, if they've already done 2 phases, I don't think that's going to be hard to sell. So it satisfies everything in my mind going through that process. So given that we're a couple days before a holiday, I want to be realistic as well and find out who we can get in touch with and get the notice put out there as well. But I think Kyle can, help identify who the best person is to do that. There's probably going to be some cost involved with the noticing as well. So, but I'm fine with the approach that Ian had mentioned there as well. Just get the notice out as quickly as possible, determine the length that you want to run that for, and the window of bidding time that needs to be provided.
Understood, and I appreciate the clarification and I guess patience and understanding of the council. This is not my full-time gig. I'm a printer by trade, so yeah, the scope of work that was put together by me in layman's terms. So
Thank you very much. Anybody else have any just last comments? Everybody seems to be in agreement.
Katie, could I just speak for a few minutes or seconds? Hopefully not minutes.
Yes.
So, I think what we talked about earlier is kind of the overarching issue here is I think there's a lot of confusion back and forth about, how a project from idea to actually being completed flows. And typically the role that the city staff play is that, they work to make sure that all the things are done, according to the statutes, all the processes are followed. And typically the committees, commissions, boards, they all serve as kind of the policy direction, and the staff kind of serve to turn their policies and their goals into reality. And so whether that's the bidding, making sure that the donations are approved, whether it's making sure that kind of the right steps happen in the right order, I think that's going to be a key component to this. And I think with being short-staffed, I'm not sure if Amy Jo is going to continue on in her capacity as their liaison, or if it will be the new Public Works Director. I think that remains to be seen. But ideally, I think we'll get to a point where projects that are identified, it's clear that the council knows what they are. It's clear in the minutes that they were approved, and if there's any phasing, similar even to butterfly. Gardens, it's one of those things where there's multiple steps, but we have to know about them and kind of make sure everyone understands what's happening. And then I think, the bid process too, I think it makes sense for them to evaluate them. But I also want to make sure that there's an understanding too that if the people that have the money right now and are your preferred vendor end up being, $1,000 more, I don't think it's as simple as just saying, well, that's who we want to go with, because I think there is a threshold. So if someone does come in lower, it's not automatic. You can choose who you want if they're not the lowest. And so, but that's again where staff and the attorney would come in to say, how would we, make the factual case that these aren't responsible bidders, being $30,000 off and, not owning the equipment or never having done a project would be a great way to start. But just being cheaper by itself isn't going to disqualify them. That's, kind of the process that's required and why it's required. So, but I think the more closely we work together, hopefully all these boxes get checked, and moving forward, it's just more smooth on all sides.
just one thing on that, Kyle, if I could too. I know some of the confusion that's gone on with HLPC and the procedures on this, if there is a worksheet or something that we could get kind of a cheat sheet or a binder, so if there's a new project like the ADA vestibule area or the new entryway at the end of the pavilion we've talked about, it's kind of on the radar, something we're talking about. But if we had a sheet, a list of criteria that, you know, we need to meet, I think it'd save everybody a lot of headaches. Again, thanks everybody for your time.
Thank you. Okay.
Kate,
We'll catch them back, hopefully soon, hopefully.
Katie, I just wanted to make sure that we don't need to put something on our next regular agenda to preemptively approve everything. I mean, we have some consensus here tonight based upon this, but do we need to take any action to officially delegate the authority to someone? I think Attorney Johnson is trying to kind of assist us through this, but if it defies ordinance or policy, does the city council actually need to take a vote at the next meeting just to make sure that we're showing that we have consensus, or are we good enough with what we heard tonight, Attorney Johnson?
I'm trying to think back to the elevator project again, because that seems to be our model. And I don't think, I don't recall there being a formal motion to delegate. Well, actually, yeah, I don't think there was a formal motion to delegate. It was done more just like you just did. Here's how we're gonna do this forward. And it would, well, okay, not now that I've talked myself in circles. It would be a good idea to put something on the next agenda as to exactly who is gonna be responsible for granting the bid. I think you have your process to get it out the door and get it published and get the bids back in the door. Who's making that decision? Is HLPC gonna make that decision, or is council gonna make that decision? I put that on your agenda.
I would feel better about doing that. Then we have it done, but even before the bids are open. But if we're delegating you to,
You're buttoning it all up.
okay, I'd feel better that way. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant about coming back with a recommendation or sharing with council after we do that bid process. Where we're at.
Yep.
We would feel better about coming back to council.
Okay. Sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure, Katie, before we moved ahead that, but I think that's probably what we should do is get something on the next regular agenda to delegate the authority to HLPC to accept the bid, and then you would come forward with that, and then we could do it in one meeting at that point, is accepting the donation, I guess.
Okay with me, thank you. Ian, did you want to chime in, or?
And just to clarify for the HLPC, they do not have to wait to get the phase 2 bid process started and in the paper before the next meeting. That's just going to be when we formalize who accepts the bid. They can start the process and get the bidding process started so that we don't set this process back another 2 weeks.
That's my understanding, Ian, is we'll work with staff to get the noticing out as soon as possible, but we'll just have the delegation at the next meeting. So we don't need to wait for the noticing.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we're gonna move on to number 7, which is review and discuss cost for Summit Court snow removal. So this is been at the committee of the whole couple of times now. We have some new information. I think we previously, so it says previously that we discussed this would be like the final year of the arrangement. And so that we would kind of play it by ear this time and then see what the costs are that that we tally during that time. Kyle, did you want to give us a little update?
Yeah, just to kind of recap the addition to the memo. Um, i- as I tried to come up with a formula or some kind of apples to apples comparison of how we would allocate costs, it just became apparent to me that because there are so many different variables, there's different street lengths. We're already driving our vehicles up and down the street for salting. So, what costs are different in one versus the other? There's a different length of street, which results in a different amount of snow and how high it can be stacked. And then, additionally, some streets like this one, or this street has what I would call private snow and the public right-of-way snow combined, and the others don't. It became quickly apparent that without some really great, lengthy study to develop some kind of formula, if we're really thinking that this is, sort of one more year to make sure that they have enough time to bid it appropriately in coming years, I think choosing a nominal amount would satisfy the kind of concept of making sure that they're paying something extra for an extra service without getting down to the second. I think maybe just a round number. Maybe it's $50 every time they call for a snow pile removal. I don't know what number you're comfortable with. The only key would be that we kind of identify who, I guess, from the HOA or from the snow plowing operation has the authority to contact us and request that, and then, who's responsible? Is it the snowplow company? Is it the HOA? And then if it doesn't get paid, ultimately, does it get special assessed? If we figure all those things out, we can make it work. But I think maybe simple may be better in this situation.
Ian, Gray?
I I very much like Zach's approach to this. I think we should charge a nominal fee. We do, of course, have to figure out whom is able to request the service be done and whom is paying for it and how it's paid. But I think that's a good thing. I honestly don't have a massive concern of how much that nominal fee is. I think $50 is probably the minimum, and we could go with that just so that they're paying something and not just receiving preferential treatment. But for this year, and then figure out a better thing next year. But I think a nominal fee is a great idea.
Thank you. Pete Adams?
As far as who's going to request and who's going to pay, um, I would go with the HOA requesting and the HOA paying the plows right away, get that all taken care of. As far as the fee goes, I'd almost split the difference and go $75 for that. Because I honestly don't know how much it's going to cost to run everything. So I'd rather err on the side of maybe just a little bit more than a little bit less. So that's my 2 cents.
You, Alder Adam. Trina Reed?
Well, I'm leaning towards the nominal fee of $50 for this year per occurrence, since we're really not quite sure with the trouble of comparing apples to grapes.
Anybody else want to chime in, or? Um, I'm okay with $50 for this year. If we do the nominal fee of $50 and start with that and see where we land. Yeah. I'm seeing some gestures. Paul's gesturing. Okay. Mayor Tome, did you have any thoughts?
No, that sounds good. I think besides the money then, do we have a consensus that the HOA would be the responsible party for contacting the city when it needs to be removed and that they would be billed?
Correct. I would echo that. And Trina, you had your hand up. Did you want to speak?
Oh, we have a representative here. I wasn't sure if he wanted to speak.
Sir, did you want to chime in? Is it Peter?
Keith Peterson? Keith Peterson?
It's Bill.
Doesn't seem like it. Is it Bill Peterson? All right. Um, it seems like we have, a consensus here, at this time that we would have, $50 per, snow removal, and then, the HOA would be responsible, for contacting the city as well as paying, um, the fee. Is that correct? Everybody seems okay with that? Okay. All right. Is that clear enough for you, Kyle?
Uh, Yes, I think between Pat and myself, we have that down.
Okay, thank you. The moment I buried my agenda and okay. Next up is number 8, review and discuss building inspection RFP bids.
I can kick this off. Can everybody hear me okay?
All right, yes, thank you, Matt.
Yeah. Okay. So enclosed in your packets are the proposals we received from the RFP that closed on November 10th of this year. So you can see we had 2 proposals, one from GEC, who's our current building inspector, and then one also from Safe Built. References were checked last week. I reached out to multiple for each proposal. The references generally checked out well for both. And also, Kyle and I interviewed both applicants on Monday. So at this point, I do feel that both candidates are qualified to do the job, depending on how council feels. But really, what we're going to recommend is that we go with Safe Built. And there's really 2 primary reasons. One is the financial component of it. They offer really a better split for the city. It's 80-20 versus 90-10. So I mean that was a fairly clear advantage when you looked at both proposals. And the other thing that I think is going to help us in the long run is they offer a more robust online tracking system. Really, right now we don't have anything from GEC. They're starting to ramp things and roll out a program, but we haven't been able to use it. And the Connect community, I think, was either way. The Safe Built had a nice online system, and when I talked to some of the other communities in the for the references, a lot of them said the online tracking system was a very valuable tool that they found. So based on that, that is what we're recommending. And I guess at this point, you can see the proposals in front of you. Any questions for myself or Kyle, please shoot.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I was overall I was really impressed with the amount of information that Safe Built provided within the bid itself, and just kind of the overall design and concept. It seems like they're um, just kind of more updated company offering a lot of different things, and I didn't get a chance to actually go on their website, but check it out. Any other, Trina Reed, go ahead.
Oh, yes, I was also very impressed with the packet from Safe Built. I couldn't believe how savvy they were in providing so many photographs of the townships they worked for, and their presentation was excellent. I liked how they gave more detailed descriptions on what their services would include. I guess my only question is um, how they compare expense wise. Like I know, I think they were like 37 cents per foot of inspection a lot of times, where the other one might have been like about 20 cents. I don't know if that becomes a little bit prohibitive or not. Just asking.
Nope. So, so the what they list there is on page. Let me get the page number just so I'm clear. Um, on page 15 and 16 of their proposal is what their fees would be if we went with option two. Um, so option two is using the fee schedule that they included in the proposal. Safe Built would adjust their fee schedule to 65, 35 for non-commercial fees, and then 90-10 for commercial fees or for commercial reviews. What staff is recommending is option one, which is the current fee schedule that we have that's adopted. So it's basically the same fee schedule that was passed by resolution in 2016, and that would be an 80-20 split. So that is the option that I think is the most preferable, because you're right, the 37 cents per square foot is much higher than Sun Prairie and Waupun and some of the other surrounding communities. So that was an option that when we were looking at the financials, really I thought option one was the best. So
Thank you. I'm so glad to hear there's a apples to apples option that they can follow our previous fee schedule. Because I was going, oh yay, and then I went like, oh, 37 cents to less than 20 cents per foot. Ooh, but
yeah.
I'm glad to hear that we have choices.
Yep.
Thank you.
And to clarify just a little bit, also, I mean, it's the same that there's going to be nothing that's going to be coming out of the city budget unless it's an hourly fee that we ask them to go and do something for us. All their expenses are going to be covered by the fees coming in. So, and that was with both proposals. So.
Yeah, I'm excited about the community portal aspect of things. You mentioned that too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Community, keep your community engaged, happy, and out of your office with quick online access to everything they need to apply for and staff permits, upload, kind of blurry on our packet, but upload plans and pay fees. So I think that will be a huge value to the city. I'm okay with moving forward with your recommendation. I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads and thumbs up, but okay. Mayor Tom, did you want to signify? Do you have questions or concerns, or are you okay moving forward with that Safe Built as well?
Yeah, I like Safe Built, and Trina asked the question that I was going to ask as well to clarify the fee schedule. So I just wanted to make sure that we didn't have to take any additional action between now and the end of the year, that we're simply bringing in a new building inspector. They are going to be enforcing our building code, and that we don't have to adjust any of the fees.
That would be my understanding, and the benefit also, because I think we potentially do want to address our the fee schedule overall. That when we do, there's really no further action because the percentage just gets applied to the new fees. So we do have that flexibility where it's not multiple processes to accomplish one thing. So it should flow nicely.
Okay, and I know that we did adopt, I guess, the skeleton of a new building code this time last year, and we still have work to do to kind of work on the details of that as well. So I just kind of wanted to point that out. But otherwise, I'm in favor of going with Safe Built. Is this a annual year-to-year agreement, or is this multiple years? I didn't look that far.
So as we put it in the request for proposals, it was a 3-year preferred term, which gives a certainty kind of on both sides that we're not back doing this in 9 months or a year, and that, you know, they can make the investment to learn the community and really invest some staff time and effort into becoming a really great partner. So it seemed like a reasonable time frame.
And would there be any contractual language that we would be concerned about if we needed to end that relationship anytime? Or is it a year advance notice if we decided we wanted to try someone else in 3 years? Have we gotten that far yet to look at the contract language?
I think if the recommendation from the committee of the whole is to move with Safe Built, then we would ask to see contract language that they would propose, have Paul take a swing at it. But those are kind of some of the key components is what's the notification prior to auto renewal, if auto renewal is an option we want. And then also, what are kind of the causes to terminate the contract? Can we get out at any time with 90 days notice, or is it, no, you're locked in for 3 years no matter what? Those will all be things that we'll have to look at specifically, but we haven't gone and gotten their contract until I think the recommendation is to move forward with them.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear of the expectations because I know we've got a pretty tight timeline right now. We're going to have to make sure we have a building inspection service in place January 1, so we've only got a few meetings left to take care of that.
Thank you, Mayor Tom and Kyle. Matt?
So, just a quick question then. So, would we need the draft contract to go to the COW at the next meeting, then approved on the 15th? That makes sense?
I think if the committee is recommending Safe Build to go to the full meeting, then yeah, I think either, you know, tonight or tomorrow morning, I would ask for a contract and we can tentatively put it on the agenda. And, you know, even if we don't have a final reviewed version, we can look at a couple of those highlighted areas and maybe get a good idea of red flags.
Okay, well, I will send an email and request that then.
Matt?
Yep.
Next, we are going to move on to number 9, which is convene to close session for state statute 19.85 sub 1 sub G to confer with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is likely to become involved. I'll roll call, Pat. Or I guess I'll need a motion to move into closed session first.
Alder Gray moves to move into closed session.
Adam seconds.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to convene to closed session for the reasons read. All those, no, now I need a roll call, Pat, please.
Gray, McCabe,
Aye.
Pifferone,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Tome, Adams.
Aye.
Motion carries.
We'll now then go to our separate closed session Zoom. And no further action will be taken this evening, so we will not return to the air. Thank you for joining us.
Is this the Zoom meeting that was sent to